MagMongoSlade. Yo, we're going to talk about AEW and this crowd. It felt like it was the pandemic all over again. See, they had rowdier crowds during the pandemic. My God, I don't know what's happening. It was just not a good night. It was an off night for this audience. My Lord. We got some news and notes, things that we got to discuss. Then we're going to get into the show. First note, Fenix had all his merchandise removed from AEW shop, which some people took to be petty on Tony Khan's part, that he's been vindictive. He's trying to punish Fenix for openly supporting Penta going to WWE, which I've also saw Thunder Rosa do and a couple of other people. And I don't see it that way. I see it as, I think Fenix is on his way out. Like, clearly, he's not going to be there after the end of this contract. But they're saying he's going to be out. He got another year or something like that. He might not even need that much time. He might let him out earlier. We don't know. But I don't see it from the perspective of he's trying to screw Fenix over. Because I don't know if Fenix sells a lot of merchandise or not. You know, it doesn't seem to me like Fenix will sell a lot of merchandise. But even if that was the case, you can't really screw Fenix because Penta is his brother. So it's like if he needs like 100,000 pesos, he's going to be good. You know, he's going to be all right, because I'm seeing that Penta is like number 1, number 2 in merchandise already. So he'll be okay. You know, he's going to be all right. Now, yeah, you don't want to mooch for the rest of your life, but, you know, I'm pretty sure he can cover it. You know, Penta's going to make quite a bit of money while Fenix is sitting here in WWE. He's going to be fine. Okay. The next thing I want to address this, because I got asked so many times that I see it. I did see that horrible clip of Darks Harwood and Chris Jericho. And I've never wanted to see Chris Jericho get to this point. It is so bad now that it's unwatchable. You know, I saw a little bit of him wrestling Edge too. Again, virtually unwatchable. Jericho is so out of shape. He's so sluggish. He's so old. He's botching. This guy is so far away from his prime. And anybody who had even a modicum of love for Chris Jericho would tell him to stop. If Tony Khan gave a shit about Chris Jericho, he would tell him to stop. He would pull him to the side and stop him right now. If he cared about Chris Jericho at all, he would stop him tomorrow and say, Chris, you're a great ambassador for the brand, but this ain't working. And the characters aren't working. They're not getting over. The matches aren't really getting over. They're getting worse and worse. Enough's enough. Not firing you, but we're going to use you mostly as a manager. And your matches are probably going to be spectacles. Use them like you use Sting. Jericho has a tag match once a month. Otherwise, he's in the corner of somebody else, much like MVP. You know, it's time for Jericho to get into that role. Enough of this, him trying to work rate with work rate guys. He's not that guy anymore. It's not 1999. It's actually 26 years after the fact. And I feel very bad saying that, because I remember 1999. I was 15. All right. But sitting back saying to myself, bro, that was 25 years ago. I never thought I would be sitting somewhere talking about the good old days, 30 years. You know, this was 30 years ago. You know, and I didn't really feel old until I realized that kids don't know what a Walkman is. And it took me a while to see that. You know, I keep forgetting that there were children born after me. So when you see that they don't know what a DVD player is, they don't know what a Walkman is, You know, the idea of them holding books in their hands is like foreign to them. Babies are being born with screens where they're pushing buttons and everything. It's like, it's a completely different world. And Jericho's 20 years older than me. Almost. He's about, maybe about 12 years older than me. These guys are running circles around Jericho. And even the older guys are running circles around Jericho. Because he's doing too much. And unless he's going to completely reinvent himself, he needs to stop. You know? And I mean reinvent himself. That includes physically. He needs to stop. He needs to go home. Or pick somebody that you really believe in and get in his corner and you politic on his behalf and you use yourself as his manager, and then maybe, just maybe, you'll work a tag team match with the guy where you'll go in there, take a couple of bumps, take a pin, and call it a day. But this Jericho is a full-time pro wrestler thing. It's not working. Jericho as a top main event attraction, even for Ring of Honor, it's not working. It's over. Not even a little bit. It's OVER. Wrap this shit up. Let's get into the rest of this show. Okie dokie. Brian Cage is defeated by Kenny Omega. Are you surprised? No, I'm not. Via the one-winged angel. Now, a lot of people are going to sit back and tell you that Kenny Omega sold the diverticulitis. He was holding his stomach. And it's true. He did sell the diverticulitis by holding his stomach. But just because he put his hand on his stomach doesn't mean he was really selling it. He was eating power bombs. He got F5'd. And he just kind of put his hand on his stomach. Like, that was it. He acknowledged that the injury should be there. But it wasn't anything. Again, the big issue is there is a difference in recognizing something and selling it. You know, if you were to punch a guy like Undertaker, he would, give this on his advantage himself. He would stagger, right? He would probably take a step back and grab the ropes or something. That's his version of selling because he has to sell relative to the character. If you see somebody else, like a Randy Orton, he might take a flop. He might even take a bump if you punched him. You know? It's different. When you see somebody, selling the knee, some people would limp with the knee. They wouldn't be able to run. They probably constantly clutch the leg. Look at Bret Hart when he sells the leg. This is how selling, getting people to believe you are legitimately injured. Not just putting your hand on your stomach and going, no. See, what Peter did in Family Guy was more selling than what Kenny Omega did in this match. Because he was still doing moonsaults. He was still flying over the top rope. He was still doing all sorts of things that require him to use his gullet. Look, man, I'm tired of arguing with people who fall in love with people like Kenny Omega, bro. I just can't do it. The best thing about this match is when he used the ropes to get the one-winged angel, because it actually put over how big Brian Cage is. And it gave him a little bit of a wink and a nod to say, hey, I can't lift this guy on my own, which I guess is the best element of it. There are many, many V-triggers in this match because Kenny Omega loves spamming those things. But, of course, he won. After the match, Don Callis' boys jumped him. Will Ospreay made the save. Didn't do him any good. Takeshita ran out there. Takeshita and Omega brawled. And then they all still got jumped by Don Callis' boys. So Omega and Ospreay are working as a team. So, okay, look. I don't dislike that. Takeshita is the money here. But Tony Khan likes Kyle Fletcher. He wants to make Kyle Fletcher a thing. He's going to fight that. He's really going to fight to make Kyle Fletcher a thing. Whatever. Okay? But Takeshita is the money there, as far as I'm concerned. Fletcher is not bad. He's just bland. He just doesn't stand out at all. But he's a good mechanic. And this is AEW, so that doesn't matter that much. But Omega getting beat down again. All right. I will say this. This all feels filler. None of this feels legitimate. It doesn't feel hot. Omega, his big return, it's been lame, if we're being honest. There hasn't been a great deal of energy behind Kenny Omega. There's been far more energy online than has been in these buildings for Kenny Omega. And I'm not seeing a lot of people really involved with Kenny Omega's work in AEW. People were very excited about the whole thing in New Japan, but that's the hardest of the hardcores, the people who stay up till 3 a.m. to watch that shit, right? But people watching that stuff, prime time, 8 o'clock, seem to be mostly yawning at this whole ordeal. And I think it's because they have not really sold the diverticulitis, how serious it is. Here's the weird thing, and I just thought about it, it just popped into my head. I was about to end this, I promise. Look at how Brock sells the diverticulitis. Like, go see some of the spots that Brock did. Like, he used to have people yank him into the corners of the desk, and he would go, ah! You know? You know how Brock do. And he would be completely and totally doubled over, rolling around on the ground. Compare him, who was twice the size of Kenny Omega, had the same illness, and compare how Omega sells it. That's the problem here. It doesn't come across like a legitimate weakness. Omega has to work harder to make the illness look legitimate. And it is legitimate, so it shouldn't be that difficult. But these guys like being, superheroes, which is fine as long as the villains have heat. But the villains are not allowed to have heat because you don't sell anything. So try dealing with that. MVP, there was a vignette. He said he's going to wrestle for the first time in 2 years. I'm like, oh, MVP's going to wrestle. Oh, how about that? And it was a 6-man tag. Mark Briscoe and Private Party versus the Hurt Business. The Hurts Incorporated. The Hurt Corporation. The Hurt Limited Liability Company. Or Hurt Syndicate. Let me tell you this, because I'm pretty sure that a couple of my subscribers, and probably a very few of you, are going to really appreciate what I'm about to say here. But it took me a long time to realize what that familiar voice was in the Hurt Business theme song in AEW. I looked it up because I was like, I know that voice. And it's Smoke DZA. Now, I know a lot of people like, who the fuck is Smoke DZA? There is a mixtape rapper from the blog era, back when J. Cole and Currency and all those guys were popping. Smoke DZA was like way underneath all of them. And I remember listening to a couple of his mixtapes way back in the gap. Again, I'm old. I'm talking 2012, 2014. And I had to go back and when I saw his name, I was like, holy shit. I haven't listened to a Smoke DZA song in, it's been well over 5 years. But if you want to know anything about Smoke DZA, he did a song called Weed Raps. It was on his KONY King of New York mixtape. That was pretty dope. He listened to Never Come Down, which was on his substance abuse mixtape. That was pretty dope. I think it was produced by Big Crit. I just looked at the mixtape list because I was trying to remember what the names of them were. There was another one called Divine Music, which I guess was also on the KONY mixtape. But all these songs are over 10 years old, but some of that stuff is kind of dope. So if you liked the Hurt Business theme song, and I never get to West Side Gun part. I like the Smoke DZA's part. So he's a big wrestling fan. He used to have wrestling themed mixtapes too, and I completely forgot about that. It completely slipped my mind. So it's very cool that we got rappers who are into wrestling and willing to do wrestling theme songs. That's fucking cool. And it was great that they did the Hurt Business theme song, and they made it fun. It was fantastic. I was more interested in that than this match, though. Anyway, I think one of the members of Private Party got pinned by Bobby Lashley, or he got submitted in the Hurt Lock. Forgive me for not giving a fuck, but I can't care. I was all about the Hurts going in there killing these guys, though, but Private Party, they need some legitimacy. Instead of losing to the Hurt Business, they should be beating people. They should be... Why can't they wrestle a regular tag team and win that match? And then, prove to everybody they're legitimate champions. And that should be the angle you go with here. The Hurt Business called them out and then say, yeah, we'll fight you. We're going to beat all these other guys first. And then when you're the last guys left, we're going to come for you too. And then you put them out there with a real tag team and Private Party beats them. They cut a promo afterwards. And then have them win again, maybe on Collision. Then a couple of more Dynamite wins. And then at the pay-per-view, Private Party's on a win streak. And the Hurt Business are on a win streak. And guess what? You have a hotter match for it. Rather than this. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell Booker of the Year for 3 years straight or something like that how to book a show, but whatever. Mercedes Moné had a vignette where we got to see her go shopping and train. And she was on TV with all of her belts. I have to say, this cult PR guy that she's got is doing a great job. Because she gets a lot of favorable media, but it doesn't translate to shit when it comes to AEW. It's just self-promotion. Which I guess is the point, because he works for Mercedes, not for AEW. Mercedes has to get people to watch AEW, but instead she constantly talks about herself. Constantly talks about herself. She goes on television talking about how she wanted to revolutionize women's wrestling, and she felt like she did that. Blah, 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 blah. She doesn't put over any of the women in AEW. She doesn't suggest that you watch the Casino Battle Royal or whatever the fuck they were going to do on this show. She didn't even pretend like she was going to be in it. Alright? So, what is she doing except promoting herself? Which I'm not blaming her for. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You should promote yourself. But when people are saying that you are the most revolutionary female wrestler of the last 30 years or whatever the fuck, you're building yourself up. You're not really helping the company. How is this really boosting up the company? What she's trying to do, seemed like to me, is to boost up the asking price when the contract comes up. She can go to Triple H and say, look, I did all this stuff in Japan. I got all these connections in television. I did movies. I did this, this, and this. You pay me more money. And she'll go back. It doesn't seem to me that we're at a point in time where she's actually trying to help, quote unquote, women's wrestling. And I'll be honest with you. Most of the time when people say, I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing this for all of you. No, they're doing it for themselves. Anybody who's honest and saying I'm doing it for myself is more likely to help you, because it might help themselves to help you. Anybody who said they're doing something for you, they're really doing it for themselves. And Mercedes Sasha Banks is absolutely in this thing for herself. Moving on to the worst segment of the night. Jeff Jarrett, MJF. What brutality. This was really, really bad. All of the benefits, all of the goodwill that Double J had last week has gone down the drain. He was out there way too long with MJF, and they were calling each other's wives and mothers whores and call girls. And I got my head in my hands the entire time, and I'm just thinking, in this, please. And they just kept going on. Jarrett kept going on. Your girlfriend's nothing but a Canadian call girl. You was giving it 60 minutes in the ring. She was giving it 60 minutes in the back. I was like, wrap it up. Wrap it up. MJF is asking what a gold medalist dick tastes like or some silly shit like that. I'm like, my God. This is what I mean by when I tell you that MJF is stale. He has to go so low. And then this stuff, he's going low, and this stuff is not getting the reaction that he wants. This segment died. This was the worst MJF segment that has ever occurred. This segment sucked. All right. And it's really unfortunate because, again, I said there was something there with Jarrett. I'm not exactly thrilled by him getting pushed, but there's something there with Jarrett. You know? And the Dustin promo later on, I think, kind of proved that. But this MJF thing is dead in the water. I don't see how this is going to work. Him calling MJF a scared little boy with no work ethic, I mean, that's fine and everything. We already know MJF is lazy and likes to cut corners. But the heat of this thing just did not work. And we were better off without it. Dustin cut a promo later, though, that was interesting, saying that MJF doesn't know shit about the passion that the two of those guys have, that MJF pissed him off, and he wants to see Jeff Jarrett achieve his dream. Oh, wait a second. Wait 1 second. I completely forgot. All of that shit that they were talking about, it was to build up to MJF talking about Owen Hart. Like, that's what the whole thing was about. I was so pissed off about how trash it was. I completely forgot the fucking point of this thing. The entire point of this was for MJF to say that Jeff Jarrett is riding Owen Hart's coattails. Pretty much. Because Jarrett is like, oh, I was fired up after the Owen Cup last year because Owen was my best friend and all that. Get real, bro. I can't believe they built up an entire angle around Owen Hart. Is Martha okay with that, by the way? Did Jarrett call Martha and say, hey, we're going to use Owen on TV? Are we good with that? Or no, did we not have to do that? Look, whatever. Let's get back to what I was talking about. Dustin was talking about the passion that him and Jeff Jarrett still have as being older guys. So they're the last of their kind and the outlaws will never die. Okay. Dustin was carrying 2 belts, and I was like, that's everything wrong with AEW right there in that shot. The fact that Dustin Rhodes is walking around with 2 Ring of Honor titles is unreal. And I don't know when he won the second one. I know he had one with Sammy Guevara, but when did he win the other one? Do I care? No, I don't even answer that question. It was rhetorical. Let's move on. Let's move on, man. I don't give a shit. Christian wrestled Hook, and the match ended in disqualification because Christian needed his boys to jump in the ring to save him from Hook. And Taz was on commentary this entire time watching his son get beat up. As Christian and his gang beat up Hook, Shibata came out there, or maybe Shibata came out there second, but Samoa Joe came out there. And Samoa Joe, huge reaction, as he should, as he deserves. He cleans house. Shibata comes out there too. He helps. And they reformed Hook and Samoa Joe. And listen, brothers. I know that there's a history between Samoa Joe and Taz and from TNA. I know that Hook and Samoa Joe were tag team partners last year before Samoa Joe went and started filming Twisted Metal. I know that he's been involved with this storyline. I get it, 100%. Trust me, I didn't forget. But Samoa Joe being reintroduced on this show in this angle is a mistake. It's a mistake. When Jon Moxley is in his own hometown and he gets the same reaction as a school shooter, I don't think you need to be having people the level of Samoa Joe and Kenny Omega in mid-card spots. I just don't think you can get away with that. Those guys need to be higher up on the card, you know? They need to at least get in Moxley's face. And maybe they want to wrap this thing up quick and then move Samoa Joe to that story, but he needs to get into that story as quickly as possible. Because this thing with Christian and Kip Sabian, Samoa Joe is in the same segment with Kip Sabian. God damn. Just throw dictionaries at me already. My God. This is terrible. Why would you book this? Why would you tell somebody that this was going to happen on television? This is stupid. Anyway, poor Samoa Joe. But he's near the end of his career, and he's just kind of enjoying his time. And we're trying to give Hook a rub, but Hook is not showing any potential anymore. He's not growing. He's hit a ceiling as a character. He's hit a ceiling as a personality. I said a couple of weeks ago, he probably should have dumped that FTW title and went his own way. And to me, that would have been a better usage of his character. And he needed to be defined as something other than Taz's son. And they just won't do it. You know, they went a while for not really even acknowledging it. And now they won't let him get out of that. Now he's just Taz's son. And everything about him is he's Taz's son. Okay. But at some point, this guy has to define himself. You know, he's got to show me who Hook is. And I know that he's not this tough-talking New Yorker. He's just not. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Moving on. The women's casino gauntlet match. It had 7 entries. It was won by Toni Storm, Chris Statlander, Jamie Hayter, Megan Bayne, Julia Hart, Willow Nightingale, Toni Storm, and Harley Cameron. Harley Cameron came in the match and promptly lost within like 2 or 3 minutes. Megan Bayne. So my brother saw Megan Bayne and was like, "Who the hell is that?" Because she was already in the ring. He was coming back from like the bathroom or something like that, and she was already in the ring, and he was like, "Who the hell is that?" And I was like, you know what? She is a big girl. She's a really big girl, actually. I saw her live in GCW a couple of times. She's a fairly decent professional wrestler. Reminds me of a little bit more polished Camille. She has the same facial expression every time I see her. So, I mean, that's a weird thing. But she's been rumored as being part of the AEW roster for a long time now. And now they finally decided to use her. And she loses the first match she's in. And look, she didn't get pinned, but she didn't win. You know, they did a decent job of having Mariah May be concerned about her, putting her over, being scared, kind of, because she is a giantess. But that's why you don't do certain things. You don't do stuff like this. You should have saved her, debut. Build it up. Like, she could be your Rhea Ripley. She could be your Charlotte. Build this thing up. Throwing her in there in a surprise. Yes, it might pop the people on the internet, but nobody else knows who Baby Girl is. So that's why she was in the ring and you could hear the seats creaking. Because she's not fucking over. Nobody knows who she is. You're not doing her any favors putting her in the ring and nobody knows who she is. There's been 5 fucking years of this. How you gotta keep saying the same thing over and over again? Build people up. Build some anticipation. Did you learn nothing from Penta? Most of the WWE audience have never seen that guy before. And now he's number 1, number 2 sell merch in WWE. Why? Because people was building anticipation to see what that is. And then they saw him and they were like, oh shit, he's fucking cool. And then they started going with it. Yeah, it's going to take a while before he gets really connecting with that audience. But right now, people are just going to ride the wave. You have to build the wave sometimes. AEW cannot build a wave. And that's been part of the problem, man. You got to build that shit up. You got to do something. But poor Megan. Anyway, Toni Storm winning was obvious. It's in Australia, so clearly she was going to win. When they said that the title match was in All In or whatever in Australia, I knew she was going to win. Everybody did. It didn't take you a genius to figure that part out. So Tony versus Mariah May. And Mariah May was very excited because she's beaten Toni Storm before, so she's very excited about this. And Toni's a bit of a retard. I'm sorry. She's a bit slow, and she thinks she's a rookie. So I get it. But all right, I can't complain about it at all. I did not forget about Ricochet, and we're going to talk about this for a second. So Ricochet comes out in a suit, and he just walks around. They're trying to do their version of the Dominic Mysterio thing, where he just stands there and he absorbs the booze. He's out there for about 2 or 3 minutes just absorbing booze. He says a picture is worth 1,000 words, points to the Tron, and this Tron is a picture of him stabbing Swerve in the head. Swerve's music plays, and of course, like an idiot, Ricochet stares at the entrance ramp, not paying attention behind him, where Prince Nana snuck up behind him and hit him with a chair. Then Swerve stalked to the ring, coming to the ring with his chain, because he's the junkyard dog apparently. And he tries to hit him with the chain, except Ricochet flees and runs away. He jumps the barricade, runs away while Swerve is chasing him. This would have been fine last week. It would have been fine last week. Now, you may say, okay, well, they wanted to give Swerve that week to sell the injury. Sure, but Ricochet should not have been in that match last week if he wasn't going to win. So he should have been out there last week, soaking up the booze, letting the reaction come in, and letting people know that he's a more serious character. Even if he wasn't going to say anything, even if he was just going to pull a Chris Jericho, come out there, stare at the people in disgust, turn around and walk away. Maybe he should have had Ricochet throw some toilet paper into the crowd. Anyway, the Ricochet Swerve match, they're actually going to do it next week on TV. So, okay. I mean, I'm guessing they're going to do more than one, which is why they're just going to do the match next week, because they're going to do more than one. And that's fine. Clearly, they're building some kind of blood feud here. They're going to get the wrestling match out of the way, which will probably be won by Swerve, and it's going to lead to Ricochet probably bloodying up Swerve again. And then they're going to get into what Swerve really wants to do, which is weapons shit, athletic weapons shit, which ought to be fine. But I think if they're just going to do a series of matches, doing the first one on TV is fine. They need the ratings. They need the attendance. They need help. So I'm not even going to lambast them for doing it this time, because they need it. They need to pop television, and they don't really have much else going for them. I think they're going to have Pac wrestle next week. I think he's going to wrestle Edge, if I remember correctly. Pac is wrestling Edge next week. So they really do need the help. So I'm not going to take them to task for building this thing up for weeks and weeks and then doing it on TV, because they need the help. All right, our main event of the evening, Powerhouse Hobbs versus Jon Moxley. And a match that was so slow, so boring, that even the hometown crowd did not care. Even though Moxley was bleeding, they did not care. Moxley went on Yahoo Sports, and he made a statement. I wasn't going to let that statement slide. We're about to talk about this statement right here. I needed to punish the people who don't listen to these entire videos. So, Moxley says this: We're building. It's a lot more than what happens in the ring. Building something sustainable for the future that we can take pride in. We've been doing that for the last few months. It's about a mindset and approach of taking pride in what we do. Everybody's a good wrestler at AEW. I don't know if there's ever been a roster assembled of this many purely great get in the ring and wrestle pro wrestlers. Renee needs to take a breathalyzer to this guy. Okay, I don't know where he's getting this stuff from. It ain't working. Whatever you're building is falling apart. All right, that's like me trying to build something. Like I'm pretty decent with my hands, but it has to already be built. I can fix something. I can't build shit. All right. I can fix it. I can't build it. All right. It's a completely different process. Requires a different skill set. All right. So Moxley is terrible. All right. He's awful. Everybody knows this. What's even sillier about this is that he's talking about all this stuff that they're building. Meanwhile, the guy that they're building it for is Darby Allin. And Darby Allin has decided he wants to climb Mount Everest because he's still on that, apparently. And so they did an angle where he's got thrown down a flight of stairs so that he could take time off to go climb Mount Everest, or to train to climb Mount Everest. And they're putting all of their time and effort into this storyline specifically so Darby Allin can beat Moxley. Nobody has had... Oh my word. And he has decided that being world champion in AEW, his primary job, the thing that he claims he loves so much, the thing that has become his gimmick the last year and a half, I love AEW, I'll stand up for AEW, I'll fight for AEW, I'll bleed for AEW, except, when I need to go climb Mount Everest. Scrawny bitch. Listen, these people have been online super mad, saying we need to pivot away from Darby Allin, we need to go in a different direction, and they're all telling the truth. As a matter of fact, you need to take it to the next level. Darby should just come back and just get buried. If this is, to me, if at this point in time, when the company is downsizing, they're running smaller buildings than they used to, there's fewer people in the audience than there's ever been before. If you're going on personal missions at a time like this, bro, you got the rest of your life to climb Mount Everest. You don't have to do that shit right now. He's like 28, 29, 30 or something like that. You got another 10 years you can climb Mount Everest. Right now, the company needs you. Right now, they're building an entire storyline around you. And you decide, I'm about to go do some dangerous and quite possibly suicidal shit instead of trying to make the company money. You don't care. You don't give a fuck. It's all about you and your desire to damn near kill yourself. You're a Riri, as they say in the streets. Well, they used to say it in the streets. I don't know what they call you now. Neurodivergent. He's a problem. What the hell is wrong with this guy? All I saw on social media all week, AEW needs to pivot away from this storyline. They need to get out of this. I'm hearing Brian Alvarez scream, you can't beat Hobbs. You can't beat him. He's super over. The people believe in him. I'm like, I didn't see all that, but I love Hobbs. So yeah, Hobbs should win. And then I'm watching this match and I'm like, oh, Hobbs can't win. Hobbs can't win. They don't believe in him. All the false finishes and stuff, they're not buying into it. Hobbs didn't really start getting a rush of energy from the crowd until he kicked out of the first Death Rider. At this point, Yuta had interfered already. Marina Shafir had hit him in the head with a briefcase. They had stacked all this stuff on top of each other. And the people still were not buying into him. And it just wasn't there. A lot of people were like, hey, this could be your Lex Luger moment. When Luger beat Hogan, this could be like that. Just have Moxley lose to Hobbs, and then Moxley could just win the title back real quick. And everybody's just like, Tony doesn't want to do that. He does not want to have short transitional championship runs. And hear me out, I'm not even saying he should have done that. I'm number one Powerhouse Hobbs fan. I'm not one of these fly-by-night, just became a fan of his over the weekend. All right? I've been a fan since probably he was on Dark. I'm telling you, you would have fucked this guy's career if he'd have won the title in front of that crowd. They would have been question marks over everybody's head. Everybody would have been like, what? This guy who never beats anybody, all of a sudden he's the world champion? Why? Like if he'd have had some steam behind him, then yeah, go for it. but with no steam at all behind this guy. He just won a random match, and now all of a sudden, he's world champion? I don't know. It was kind of weird when they did it with Mark Henry in WWE. It was kind of weird when they did it with Jinder Mahal in WWE. You know, it was odd. And those guys ended up getting over to a degree because they had talent. And Hobbs would have gotten over too. But to me, if you was going to have Hobbs win the title, it should be the end of his story, not a comma in Jon Moxley's story. You know? And look, AEW fans, a lot of these guys are just looking for something. They want this Death Riders angle to be over, or they want something to get energized by. So they're suggesting all sorts of weird stuff, right? None of it's going to work, right? But as many people as were talking about it, you know, maybe in the middle of the match near the end, I was like, maybe they should consider putting the belt on Hobbs. At the same time, though, the crowd didn't buy it. And I was like, if the crowd doesn't buy it, you can't do it. Now, I hated the finish because after they did all this Death Rider shit all over him, he loses to the Bulldog choke, which I guess was Moxley's way of showing respect because he didn't get pinned or submitted. It was a referee stoppage. And if you really want people to care about Hobbs, the question now is, what do you do with him now? You put him in this championship match with 1 week of build-up, and he lost. Is that it? Is it over for him? Because he lost to Keshta, and he's lost to Moxley. Is that it? Are we done? Is there no more other worlds to conquer? Or is he going to start wrestling Okada next, losing to him too? Or is he going to wrestle Daniel Garcia and lose to him too? Because if this is all there is for Hobbs, why should he stick around? If this is all there is, why stick around? If he can't go beyond this point, and he's already gone far beyond what I thought, considering he's been on the roster for 4 or 5 years. This is the second biggest match he's ever had. The first one was probably the CM Punk match, which should have been a breakthrough match because it was actually pretty good. This one wasn't even good. This wasn't even a good match. Because Moxley wrestles a style that it is like he's wearing gravity boots. Like he got 10 pounds, 15, 100 pounds strapped to his legs. He can't fucking move. It's like he's covered in molasses. What is happening? He's terrible. And he's been terrible for a while. It's been a good 4 or 5 years of Moxley just not caring a fuck. He's trying. He's going in the media and he's talking about how he's trying. But if this is him trying, then he needs to go home. He needs to call it a career and call it a day. Because something tells me he can do better than this. And he's just choosing not to because he doesn't have to. But Hobbs, just like everybody else, got beat up by the Death Riders. Nobody did anything for 3 minutes while he got beat with chairs, choked with chairs, his legs stomped into chairs. And then Edge ran out there and with FTR, right on his back pockets, and Moxley and them fled. So there's that. The big feud is Edge and Moxley. That's where they're building to. I can't be mad at it because you're trying to sell out a stadium. So go with the trusted names that people who have worked in stadiums before. I get it. But I am going to concur with everybody who says don't sit around waiting for Darby Allin. I 100% support that idea. Do not sit around waiting for Darby Allin. It's a waste of your time. But something has to happen because this Death Rider story is dead meat. It's not working. And I would love to be Tony Khan where he has to see that the crowd is not really reacting and they're in Jon Moxley's hometown. And it's not even a big crowd. It's like 1,500 people. There was more people at a festival that I went to than have been in, I'm talking like one of those small college festivals than it was in that building. Not to knock them, because I say they should run smaller buildings. But my God, the energy just went through the toilet. It's down into the pipes. It's stuck in the pipes. My God. It's the shits. Fix this. And the way you fix it is you got to get that belt off Moxley. I don't know who you put it on because nobody's hot. But you got to do something. And, you know, Moxley coming across as being the biggest, roughest, toughest guy on your roster, that would be legitimate if he was in there fighting Samoa Joe. That would be legitimate if he was standing toe-to-toe with Bobby Lashley. You know? Then people would be like, holy hell, yeah. That would be great. You know, like, if Moxley is some kind of sawed-off badass where he's you know, kidnapping the Rock and Roll Express and he's duct taping them and all this shit, it's like, yeah, that's fine and all, but he's a badass, but there's a couple of guys on this roster that I'm pretty sure Moxley don't want to see, you know? And they're obviously avoiding him. You know, and he's obviously avoiding them. And it's like a situation where, how can you get away with this? You got to learn how to book things and, you know, still have your way. Like, if you wanted to have Moxley be the baddest of the badasses, book him to wrestle Bobby Lashley. You do a couple of stare downs, especially when Lashley was hot. And then if you're going to book Moxley to win, find a cheap way for Moxley to win. Have somebody cost Lashley the match. Have Lashley get disqualified. Lashley gets counted out. Maybe Moxley grabs the belt and walks off because he's a real heel. You know, same thing with Samoa Joe. Especially if you're going to have him wrestle older guys. Him wrestling Edge is fine. It's a decent start. But the young guys ain't got no juice. They ain't got no motion. MJF is stuck in the mud. Darby Allin wants to be worm food. And Daniel Garcia is cast out to the realm of Collision. Like, who else you got? Kyle Fletcher? He still thinks he's Randy Orton from a different life or something like that. Like, what the fuck is going on here? You bring back Kenny Omega, you throw him in some mid-card shit instead of putting him in there with Moxley. Which is what people wanted to see. They have a history already. You don't throw Will Ospreay in there. You don't throw Lashley in there. You don't throw Samoa Joe in there. So you got a couple of different kinds of baby faces you could have had. If you wanted to have a badass, you got Lashley and Samoa Joe. If you wanted to have a younger, exciting, flashier, what AEW actually is, you got Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega. You got MJF. He's feuding with Jeff Jarrett, calling Jeff Jarrett's wife a whore. He's fighting really, really hard to be a heel. And now people just don't care about him. It's in complete disarray. That's what's going on. It's just chaos. It's just leaves and fire and broken wood and flipped cars all over the place. This show is a mess. It's a disaster. It's literally a disaster area. And I don't have no idea how you can fix this. It will require you to not engage in overly protective booking. It will require you to be creative. It will require you to look at how things are traditionally built in pro wrestling. You know, not just trying to build to the mega match, but also making sure that the characters that, as you want to portray them, they actually meet that standard. You want to have a badass, he needs to be a badass, man. You know, if your guy's going to be a sympathetic babyface, he needs to go out there and get some sympathy. But he also needs to win. You know, have to get people to care about those mid-card belts. Those mid-card belts don't even get defended on TV. You don't even see these people. Takesha doesn't wrestle on this show. When the last time Takesha wrestled on Dynamite? When was the time Okada wrestled on Dynamite? Probably for that stupid tournament. Same thing for Daniel Garcia. So the tag team champions just wrestled on the show for the first time in months. Where the fuck are those 6-man belts? You got nothing going. There's no juice in that fruit. It's over. Call it a day. Cancel Christmas. Bye-bye. 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 Bye.